Oregon has their sights set not just on a Pac-12 title, but also a berth in the college football playoff. Can they do it in 2019? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert. Yeah. Justin Herbert shocked the nation last year when he announced that he would be foregoing the NFL draft and returning for a final season with the Ducks. That decision immediately made Oregon Pac-12 title contenders in 2019 and also made them a college football playoff dark horse candidate going into this season. And rightfully so. A quarterback can't do everything for the team, but he can also do it when that offense returns 10 starters, and that's exactly what Oregon has. They bring back Herbert, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation, a Heisman Trophy candidate, but they also return C.J. Verdell, a 1,000-yard rusher last year as a freshman, so not only will they be able to beat you through the air, but Oregon has a very potent rushing game as well. They get Juwan Johnson, a transfer wide receiver from Penn State, and have arguably the best offensive line in the entire nation. So this Oregon offense will not only be probably the best in the Pac-12, but could be one of the very best in the entire nation. Defensively, they returned 7 starters, so all the way around, this is a very experienced Oregon Ducks team. Troy Dye returns, the leading tackler for the Ducks last year. Kayvon Thibodeau, the big-time recruit that Oregon landed, he will be a freshman at defensive end. It will make an immediate impact in 2019. And the secondary will be led by Javon Holland, who led the team with 5 interceptions last year. So this is a very, very dangerous Oregon team in 2019. Not only could they win the Pac-12, but could very well slip in to the college football playoff. But they have a very tough test in week 1, going up against Auburn and Arlington, one of the most highly anticipated games of the college football season, one of the most highly anticipated games of week 1. And you heard me mention that I believe that Oregon has one of the best offensive lines in the entire nation. They're going up against one of the toughest defensive lines in the entire nation in Auburn, who will have Maron Davidson, Derek Brown, and Nick Coe. So this is going to be a very, very difficult Auburn defensive line to go up against. This is a game that could very well be won in the trenches. But Oregon, in my opinion, owns the edge at the quarterback position. Auburn having a bit of a question there themselves. Will it be Bo Nix or Joey Gatewood? I believe in week 1 it will probably be Joey Gatewood. Gus Malzahn coming back. He's going to start calling the plays in 2019. So while Oregon, their offensive line is going to have a tough test against this Auburn defensive line, and while C.J. Verdell may get shut down, the quarterback play is going to be the key difference maker in this game. You can talk all you want about how the SEC may be more dominant than any other conference, but Oregon opens up the season 1-0 with a win over Auburn in Arlington. And the Auburn fans will freak out over this. This is a rematch also of the 2010 National Championship game. Those are always fun to watch. But in the end, this is an Oregon team that is really legit. This is an absolutely legit team. This Oregon team is better than the Washington team that Auburn faced off against last year in week 1, where Auburn won that game 21-16. So in one of the most highly anticipated games, Oregon wins a close one against Auburn, due in part to Justin Herbert's return to Eugene. They start off the season 3-0 with a win over Nevada and a win over Montana. Shouldn't have any issue there before their first road game against Stanford, their first Pac-12 game against Stanford. Last year, Oregon lost to Stanford 38-31 in overtime, and that was a game that Stanford did not win. That was a game that Oregon lost. They blew a 24-7 lead, had the game iced. They ended up fumbling the ball. Syracuse was able to go down there and tie it and then win it in overtime. So Oregon absolutely just blew that game. This year, Stanford, a little bit more of a less experienced team. They only returned 9 starters, 4 on offense, 5 on defense, and will be led by another solid quarterback in the Pac-12 in KJ Costello, arguably one of the best in the conference. While this game is on the road, I truly believe that Oregon has too much talent to lose this game to Stanford. I believe the revenge factor will also play a major role in this game as well. And so while Oregon could struggle a little bit against this defensive Stanford, I think they have too much on the offensive side of the ball, and this Oregon defense is not getting enough credit. I think Stanford's going to be fairly one-dimensional in 2019. They lose Bryce Love, who, yes, was a bit of a non-factor in 2018, but they're going to have to rely a lot more on this passing game. If they take that away, it's going to be a rough night for Stanford. Oregon goes on the road and defeats the Cardinal to start off the season 4-0. They get a much-needed bye week going into a game against California, and they're very lucky that they go back-to-back games against California and Colorado. Now, I'm not to say these are easy games, but they're nothing compared to the likes of Auburn, Stanford, Washington State. So this California team arguably has one of the better secondaries in the entire nation, which could pose a problem for Justin Herbert. But Oregon's coming off a week of rest. Oregon does have Justin Herbert, so if he does struggle against the secondary, that's fine because they have C.J. Friedel at running back. So maybe this is a game where you will see more of a rushing attack from Oregon if they take away that passing game. But this is a California team that's going to rely a lot on their defense, which is what we would expect out of Justin Wilcox, but their offense is something that I think will struggle tremendously in 2019, something that could potentially prevent them from making a bowl game. The defense is great, but the offense is what's going to struggle. Oregon's coming off a week of rest. They get a win over California. Justin Herbert might not have the best game, but expect the rushing game to play a huge role in this one. They remain at home facing off against Colorado, facing off against Mel Tucker, a brand new head coach for the Buffaloes coming over from Georgia. And this is a Colorado team that no one needs to sleep on by any means. But they have one of the most difficult schedules in the country. And that's what's going to be the problem for the Buffaloes. The talent is there, but the schedule does not do them any favors. I have a lot of faith in Steven Montez. I have a lot of faith in Laviska Shenault, the top wide receiver for the Buffaloes. But in the end, it's not going to be enough to come on the road and upset Oregon. The Ducks start off the season 6-0, going on the road to face off against Washington. Now, this is a game that could very well decide who wins this Pac-12 North Division. It very well could. Last year, Oregon got the best of the Huskies. They beat them 30-27 in Eugene. It was an absolute thriller, that game going to overtime. And yes, Washington does lose their all-time leading passer in Jake Browning. They lose their all-time leading rusher in Myles Gaskin. But they do bring in Jacob Eason at quarterback, the transfer quarterback from Georgia who sat out last season. They also bring in a phenomenal crew of wide receivers. So Jacob Eason coming in, he's been in the system for a while now, even though he didn't get to play last year. He inherits a very talented crew of wide receivers. This will be a very tough test for this Oregon defense. This game is on the road, and I think that's what gives Washington the edge in this one. Yes, they only return 2 starters defensively. Yes, they lose their top 2 offensive playmakers, but Jacob Eason, I do think, can get the job done. This game being on the road, Washington having a little bit of a revenge factor in there as well. I think Oregon falls for the first time this season on the road to Washington. Now, whether or not that prevents Oregon from making the Pac-12 championship game, that remains to be seen. But this is a game that's so important for the Huskies and the Ducks in determining who will represent the North in that Pac-12 title game. They come back home to face off against Washington State. This is a game that Oregon lost 34-20 last year in Pullman. If you remember, that was such a big deal because that was the first time College Game Day ever visited Pullman. And the Cougars showed up, beating the Ducks by 14 as somewhat of an underdog. I think Oregon was 12th and Washington State was 25th. This year, Washington State brings in another transfer quarterback in Gage Gubrud. They lose Gardner Minshew, but this game is at home. Oregon is coming off a loss. Revenge factor once again. Oregon could have been so much of a better team last year had they been able to win those close games or win the games that they should have. Oregon comes back home, defeats the Cougars, who will still remain a threat in the Pac-12, but not enough to come on the road and defeat the Ducks. Then a major trap game here against USC. I will say this USC game and this Arizona State game are major trap games for Oregon, who, despite losing to Washington, is still in the hunt for the Pac-12 title and is still in the hunt for a college football playoff berth. This USC team, though, at the Coliseum, not an easy place to play, and JT Daniels has another year under his belt as quarterback for the Trojans, and he is learning under Graham Harrell, who will be the offensive coordinator for USC this season, and implementing an air raid offense. So it's going to be, once again, a very tough test for this Oregon defense, but I do think that they can go on the road and squeeze one out against the USC Trojans. I think it's going to be a very close game, but I do believe Oregon gets the job done. USC and Clay Helton certainly on the hot seat going into 2019. It could be a new era in 2020 if he does not live up to the expectations in 2019. They get another bye week. Once again, going into the Arizona game, 3 games left. Oregon only has 1 loss. They take care of Arizona. Another revenge game, in my opinion. Last year, Oregon went on the road to face off the Wildcats, lost 44-15. And that was against an Arizona team that was not that good last year. Missed out on a bowl game, went 5-7. Khalil Tate battling an injury last year. Wasn't like he was in 2017. This year, expect Arizona to be much better, much improved. They got J.J. Taylor at running back. They have Khalil Tate and Kevin Sumlin in year 2. I would expect to take major strides. But not enough to come on the road and beat Oregon after a week of rest. Oregon takes very easy care of the Wildcats there. And then Arizona State. I mentioned this is a big-time trap game, in my opinion, for the Ducks. And Arizona State and Oregon have had some classic battles the past few years. Last year, Arizona State lost by just 2 points to the Ducks. In 2017, Arizona State beat Oregon by 2 points. And then in 2015, Arizona State lost in 3 overtimes to Oregon. So these guys have had some classic games over the past few years. And I think Arizona State wins this game in another classic. The desert is a very difficult place to play. We have seen that over the past few years. We saw that last year under Herm Edwards, who did better than everybody thought that he would. And his signature win last year came against Michigan State in Week 2. His signature win in 2019 comes at the very end of the season against Oregon. I believe Arizona State, with a lot of those returning starters and Eno Benjamin at running back, thrashes this Oregon defense and gets a big-time win. Oregon falls to Arizona State, could ruin their college football playoff hopes and could ruin their big Pac-12 title hopes, depending on how Washington does. They come back home to close out the season against Oregon State. Oregon has won the past 2 by a combined score of 124-25. The Beavers will be much improved in 2019. There's no doubt about that, at least statistically. Record-wise, they might not because of how difficult their schedule is. But Oregon should have no issue beating Oregon State. It is back home. There's their final game. The seniors are going out. Justin Herbert playing his final game for the Ducks. They take easy care of the Beavers to close out the season, and they finish 2019 with a 10-2 record. The question will be, is that good enough to get to the Pac-12 championship game? It's all going to come down to how Washington fares. I do think Oregon loses to Washington midway through the season, and that's going to be so key for them. 2 conference losses, they're going to have to hope Washington screws up along the way. But regardless, 10-2, a phenomenal year for Mario Cristobal and this Ducks program. Could be in contention for a New Year's 6 bowl berth, and very well could be in the hunt for the college football playoff if they can pull off a win against Washington or Arizona State. I do not think the Ducks go undefeated, but a 10-2 season or even 11-1 is extremely possible in 2019. And I can't wait to see how it plays out with one of the best offenses in the nation and one of the biggest dark horses in the entire country as well. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us here. Go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert. And as always, check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. The link is in the description below. Sign up for our newsletter, check out our videos, and sign up for our expert picks. For just $30, you will receive every single one of our 2019 spread picks, including the college football postseason, 2019-2020 postseason. It's a deal and an opportunity that no college football fan can pass up. So what are you waiting for? Go join the team today and sign up only at thegridironexpert.com. And guys, as always, thank you for watching here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.